The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
I can't sleep much. It's heartbreaking. My wife and I are crying all the time.
Heartbreak gripping thousands across Los Angeles as deadly fires continue to rage tonight. The latest on evacuations, containment efforts, and what's being investigated as a possible cause. Then Pete Hegseth sits in the hot seat as his nomination is considered by the Senate. How he handled the criticism as his chances of becoming the next Secretary of Defense begin to take shape. Plus, insurance companies and your data, why one state believes a popular insurance app on smartphones is spying on drivers as a means to raise their rates. Tonight, firefighters battling powerful winds as they struggle to turn the page on devastating wildfires that continue to set Southern California ablaze. Thankfully, the winds not as strong as were initially forecast, though the challenging conditions still threatening to help major fires there spread. At last check, the Palisades fire in western Los Angeles had burned more than 23,000 acres with just 17% containment. Meantime, the Eaton fire, which is in northeast LA, has burned 14,000 acres and is 35% contained. This as fire crews just contained the Auto fire, which erupted overnight. This one cropping up in nearby Ventura County. Firefighters have also almost subdued the Hearst fire in the San Fernando Valley near Sylmar. And tonight, as a result, at least 24 people have died. That includes 55-year-old Randall Mead, a well-known surfer who wanted to protect his beloved Malibu home. According to friends, Mead was also a fierce protector of his cat, and it is believed he may have been searching for his pet when the fires broke out.
He must have just taken him a few minutes or a few seconds too long searching for that cat, and he underestimated this fire, and the fire just came and got them both, and it's heartbreaking. I can't even believe what happened.
Officials say the true death toll isn't known as the fires continue to burn. This as scores of pets in the area remain displaced. One group says it's doing all it can to make sure frightened animals have temporary homes.
What we've done is moved as many animals out of the Los Angeles shelter system and the Pasadena Humane Society as we possibly can. And right now that's about 600 animals.
Right now, more than 88,000 residents still under evacuation orders. Tonight, a task force that includes local, state, and federal investigators is trying to determine how these fires started. But help and relief efforts are underway all across the country to help everyone affected. Our parent company, Sinclair Incorporated, is now partnering with the Salvation Army for Sinclair Cares California Wildfires Relief to provide essential meals, fresh water, and supplies to the hardest hit areas. And if you want more information, if you'd like to give yourself, just scan the QR code on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faced a tough confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill today. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins was in the room for that hearing, and she joins us from Washington with how Hegseth addressed the numerous criticisms against him.
Pete Hegseth walked into Tuesday's Senate confirmation hearing, greeted with standing applause from the crowd. Veterans from all branches and generations showing up to support Trump's pick to lead DOD. USA! Perhaps the most controversial of Trump's cabinet picks, Hegseth presenting himself as a change leader who will restore the warrior ethos and rebuild the military. He's harshly criticized diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the armed forces.
Our standards will be high and they will be equal, not equitable. That's a very different word.
Hegseth also pressed on his view women should not be allowed in combat roles, a stance he reversed during the hearing.
Yes, women will have access to ground combat roles.
Democrats arguing Hegseth is not qualified for the job. While he's a combat veteran who served in the National Guard in Iraq and Afghanistan, he lacks upper military leadership experience typical of traditional picks.
The American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person.
It's so hypocritical. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here.
Democrats also attacking Hegseth's character, allegations of sexual assault.
I was falsely accused. It was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
His marriages, divorces, and reports of excessive drinking.
How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down?
So the question going forward is, did Hegseth adequately address the criticisms against him to get the votes he needs for confirmation? He can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes if every Democrat in the Senate votes against him. On Capitol Hill, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Kayla, thank you. China right now mulling over a contingency plan to sell the app TikTok to billionaire Elon Musk, according to Bloomberg News. The news outlet reports it's one of a few options the Chinese government is looking at if the app is banned in the United States. TikTok's parent company ByteDance has to divest in the app's U.S. business by January 19th unless the Supreme Court intervenes. But what happens if the app is banned on Sunday? Well, if you already have TikTok downloaded on your phone, you'll probably still be able to use it for the time being, but new downloads of the app or future updates will be prohibited. Cybersecurity experts also warn that users' data could be further at risk. Without new software patches, the site could become more vulnerable to hackers or even the Chinese state. New details: former special counsel prosecutor Jack Smith says he would have secured a conviction had Donald Trump not won the election. Smith, who resigned from the Justice Department earlier this week, released a 170-page report detailing part of his case against President-elect Donald Trump, inspiring his supporters to commit acts of violence on January 6th and alleged work to overturn the 2020 election. Both Democrats and Trump's transition team are weighing in on that report.
President Trump intimately was part of the election interference, having fake electors, and trying to thwart a peaceful transfer of power.
For Jack Smith to go and put this out on his way out the door, leaving town in disgrace, I think shows just how politicized the entire Justice Department has become.
Special counsel David Weiss also released his final report on the Justice Department investigations into Hunter Biden. The report lays out what he sees as the major crimes committed by the president's son, but is perhaps even more remarkable in what he says about the president himself. Here's the National News Desk's Christine Frizzau.
On the 2 federal cases against President Biden's son Hunter, special counsel David Weiss concludes that the younger Biden consciously and willfully chose not to pay at least $1.4 million in taxes. And in the second case, that he understood that he was lying, but did so anyway because he wanted to own a gun, even though he was actively using crack cocaine, as Hunter confirmed in his memoir.
Mainly, however, we just planted ourselves on the couch and smoked a ton of crack for endless hours, day after day.
Mr. President, just days before his sentencing, President Biden issued a sweeping pardon for his son for any crimes he may have committed during a 10-year period.
It starts in January of 2014, which is when the China deals, the deals with Ukraine, and the deals with Russia begin. Curiously, it carries forward till December of 2024.
Critics say it covers Hunter Biden for crimes the public may not know about. But the report is most notable for the scathing criticism of President Biden, who in his pardon said the investigation into his son had been infected by raw politics. Weiss writing those characterizations are incorrect based on the facts in this case, and on a more fundamental level, they are wrong. Adding that politicians who attack the decisions of career prosecutors as politically motivated when they disagree with the outcome undermine the public's confidence in our criminal justice system.
And I think David Weiss correctly said, well, I've got to defend myself. This was not a political prosecution. He broke the law. In other words, he possessed a firearm when he shouldn't have, and he lied about the possessing of that firearm, and he didn't pay his taxes.
Hunter Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, now calling the investigation a cautionary tale of the abuse of prosecutorial power.
Now, with Republicans in the majority in both the House and the Senate, some have already hinted they may reopen investigations into Hunter Biden and, more so, the role his father played in those business deals.
And Christine, with that pardon for Hunter Biden extending for 10 years, what would be the point of Capitol Hill lawmakers reopening the probe?
Yeah, Amira, a lot of Democrats would argue there is no point. It's a waste of time and taxpayer money and has no bearing on everyday Americans. But there are still some Republican lawmakers who believe that if Joe Biden did, in fact, get involved in any of those business deals, especially made with companies linked to China or Russia, that national security could be compromised. They believe there's still much more to learn.
All right, more to come on this. Christine Frizzell, thanks for staying on top of it. The FAA now investigating a near collision between two passenger jets outside of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport this weekend. Initial information says the tower cleared both planes to land despite being only 435 feet apart vertically and less than 1,500 feet laterally away from each other. Both planes did land safely. There were a combined 374 passengers aboard those planes. Michael Lewis, the 55-year-old man arrested for stalking and sending threatening online messages to WNBA star Caitlin Clark, is being held on a $50,000 bond. The judge entered a not guilty plea on Lewis's behalf, but also rebuked the defendant for repeatedly interrupting the court proceedings. Lewis faces 6 years in prison if found guilty. A pretrial hearing is set for March 31st. An Arctic blast continues to cover the country. How long it's expected to last and how far south it could stretch. Plus, closer than ever, could a ceasefire hostage agreement actually get done within the next week? We'll dig into that on the other side. And later, one state raising its tobacco tax for the health of its citizens, why local residents don't think it'll have much of an impact. The Arctic blast, known as the Siberian Express, being felt across much of the country tonight, and it will continue through midweek before temperatures begin to slightly increase by week's end on the West Coast. Tonight, these dangerous lows are in the single digits, if not below zero, from the Dakotas as far south as northern Kentucky. The eastern half of the United States will continue to see below normal temperatures for much of next week as well. And we want to give you a live look now over Cleveland, Ohio, and in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, as both states are being hit again by lake effect snow. Indiana, New York, Vermont, and parts of Michigan also under winter weather alerts. Several inches of snow are expected tonight, creating dangerous driving conditions in the impacted areas. The winter weather advisory remains in effect until at least tomorrow night. Also tonight, a potential breakthrough in the Israel-Hamas war that continues to rage in Gaza. The two sides have reportedly reached an agreement on a ceasefire. That's according to Qatar, which has been mediating the negotiations. The progress comes after 15 months of war and about as many months of failed attempts to achieve a breakthrough.
The ball is now in Hamas's court. If Hamas accepts, the deal is ready to be concluded and implemented. I believe we will get a ceasefire.
Details of the proposed agreement are not yet clear, but we do know it will include the release of dozens of hostages and an end to the hostilities, bringing relief to Palestinians in Gaza who have endured treacherous conditions and displacement and relentless bombardments by Israel, and for the families of hostages abducted from Israel by Hamas, more than 90 of which are still thought to be inside Gaza. President Joe Biden has removed Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terror. President Barack Obama did the same in his final week in office in 2015. But then President Donald Trump put Cuba back on the list in his last week of his first term in 2020. Trump takes office next Monday. It's not clear what he will do. In return for lifting the designation, President Biden secured the release of political prisoners who have been detained since July of 2021 for protesting against the Cuban regime. Allstate and its subsidiary are under fire for allegedly collecting the driving data of millions without consent. The insurance giant is accused by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton of building a database to sell to other companies and justify premium increases. The National News Desk's Andrew Freeman is in Austin, where more than 45 million drivers are impacted, possibly without knowing it.
I'm doing a lot of different gig work. I'm driving every day.
As a rideshare driver, Adrian Thomas says his job literally depends on his insurance.
We want to be able to make sure that any drivers are actually able to cover any incidents that may happen.
That's why he says he's upset to learn a company like Allstate could be illegally collecting consumer data to sell and influence its own decisions on setting insurance rates.
And then they deny me or give me a really high rate just because of data they have I don't know about that was collected. That's really shady. That's terrible.
Dallas-based appellate lawyer Chad Rubik says right now these are only allegations.
There's a lot yet to come. It will be interesting to see what Allstate, its subsidiaries, have to say about this lawsuit. At this point, we're only hearing one side.
We reached out to Allstate, who says in a statement, Arity helps consumers get the most accurate auto insurance price after they consent in a simple and transparent way that fully complies with all laws and regulations. But if the AG's allegations are true, Rubik says it would be a clear violation of the Texas Data Privacy and Security Act.
The problem is that the individuals have not consented, according to the lawsuit, to their data being used.
Allstate's accused of having its subsidiary Arity pay app developers to incorporate its software to track consumers' driving data, including distance and duration of travel, braking events, and even whether a person picked up or opened their phone.
Consumer privacy is immensely important because they can take your data and do a lot of things with it. You could wind up paying higher prices for, say, other products as well.
Austinite Andy Gazelle even uses one of the apps named in the lawsuit, Life 360. She says the practice is unacceptable.
I hope that they're able to stop it and maybe put more clauses and make it more clear that they're going to be tracking you.
And it's these practices Michael DeLong with the Consumer Federation of America hopes lawmakers will put to an end. But consumers need to be aware too.
If something is free but they want to collect your data, that means there's a good chance that you and your data are being the product. And that's not a good thing, and you should look out for that.
The risk of people developing dementia is growing. According to a new study in the journal Nature Medicine, about 1 million Americans a year are expected to develop a form of this disease by the year 2060. That's roughly double today's number. After the age of 55, people have a 4 in 10 chance of eventually developing dementia if they live long enough. Dementia involves progressive loss of memory, language, and other cognitive functions. Alzheimer's is the most common form. This year's norovirus outbreak has more than doubled the rate of national cases discovered last year. Exact numbers of who has contracted norovirus is hard to specify, as most cases clear on their own and not all patients seek medical care. But the CDC notes that the positive rate of norovirus tests has increased by nearly 15%. The worst hit states are in the Midwest, from Kansas to Michigan. From the wildfires in California to the snow and ice across the Midwest, our nation's blood supply has taken quite a hit in recent weeks. Medical reporter Liz Bonus has more.
Hey there, everybody. Hello to you. Those who care for our nation's blood supply, asking you to find a blood drive or a donation site near you and make an appointment to donate blood if possible.
I don't know how many things I can do and give back to the community in such a visceral way.
That's what Michael Staverman chose to do this week here at Kentucky's Hawksworth Blood Center.
Giving platelets today, so.
Platelets are a blood product that have a short shelf life. They are used within days of donation for treatments that help cancer and burn victims. With the California wildfires burning, every blood center in America needs help right now to assist with this product. Other areas are getting hammered right now with snow and ice. They, too, have a high demand for whole blood.
We need more than 400 donations a day just to keep up with the normal demand. Then when you're talking about disasters happening and other things that might impact that demand, now you need even more donors.
Ashley Smith says add the rise in flu, COVID-19, and other viral illnesses right now.
People are getting sick. They can't come in. They can't come in safely because of the weather, and then they might even be sick. And so when you look at those numbers starting to go down, now we have to go to, kind of those extra measures to get people to come in.
Those extra measures might mean everything from extra hours to added blood drives, all with the hope that each community can meet its own blood supply and then share additional donations with those who cannot.
My dad always donated blood through the years. He donated every time he was due to come up to be eligible again. And so it's kind of my connection to him. And that just makes a really big difference for me.
Carla Manning says if you feel helpless in any disaster, remember the greatest gifts that we all can give is the gift of life. Now, for so many conditions, the team reminds us there's simply no substitute for blood when it is really needed. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Liz, thank you. The horrific wildfires in Los Angeles impacting a lot more than just thousands of people. How one state is helping animal shelters over capacity in Los Angeles as pets of all kinds need new homes. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin with the California wildfires.
It was a special arrival at Boeing Field. Inside, furry and frightened cargo.
It's a relief, getting all these animals out of here.
More than 60 dogs and cats coming out of Los Angeles shelters and into the caring hands of Seattle Humane.
We're going to get everybody in and tucked in tonight. They've had a long day.
The fires around Los Angeles have devastated entire towns and displaced animals of all kinds.
They're in desperate need of getting dogs out so that they can make room for the displaced dogs coming in.
After a long trip, these cats and dogs are hopefully now closer to new homes here in Washington. But animal care workers say this is just the start.
We're not in the aftermath. It's all still going on. They need as much help and support as possible right now.
Governor Mills says right now Maine has the cheapest cigarette tax rate of any state in New England. She says this is one way she's keeping tax increases to a minimum in her 2-year budget. The governor wants to raise the state tax on cigarettes from $2 to $3, as well as increase the excise tax on other tobacco products. It would in turn generate about $80 million in revenue from Maine over the next 2 years.
When cigarettes are a leading cause of cancer, heart disease, stroke, and when more than 1/3 of Maine cancer deaths each year are attributable to smoking, our current policy doesn't make sense. It's time to change it.
This week, Governor Maura Healey issuing a public promise.
I have no tolerance for criminal activity that puts either residents in those sites or the public at large at risk. Absolutely no tolerance for that.
To bolster security efforts at all emergency shelter locations throughout the state, the governor emphasizing her commitment to strengthening intake background checks to include cross-checks against the state's criminal offender record information database. This despite claims that she had already issued this as an executive order in the spring of last year.
I was recently informed that by my team that did not happen at all sites, and that's absolutely unacceptable.
Coming up, rapid rescue, the Olympian who found himself in uncharted waters when given the chance to save a life. Take a look at this. An incredible rescue caught on camera. Olympian Bruno Lobo was kite surfing in Brazil when he says he heard a woman cry for help. Lobo rushed to the struggling woman and asked her to climb on his back and then carried her to safety. He later shared the story as an opportunity to warn swimmers about the danger of powerful currents. The rescued woman, meantime, she expressed her thanks to the athlete, saying, quote, "Words can't describe my gratitude." Pretty cool. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.